Boy, oh boy, has it been a day. You'll have to excuse me. I am a little bit tired today. As you can probably see behind me, I narrowly avoided a critical failure in my fish tank last night, so I was up pretty late, well, essentially freaking out. And now I have two clamps on it that are literally holding together the structural integrity of the entire tank. The good news is the clamps actually fix the whole problem. They're just an eyesore, so there is no chance of all my glass shattering out and my carpet becoming the new home for a bunch of salt water, my fish, and a ton of sand. So I guess that is some good news as part of it. The other silver lining is that this happening allowed me to put a little fire underneath the people that I've been waiting on to get this one up and running. But unfortunately, once I even get water and the rock and sand and everything into this, I'm about 6 months, not 6 months, 6 weeks out from even being able to transfer everything over. So there is a little bit of concern there. And now I do have an eyesore of two clamps just living on my fish tank. But that did shift around my priorities for the weekend. I initially was planning on doing this video this weekend to do it a standard one today to either play some Grand Arena or maybe play around with some of the OTA cards. But instead, this is going to be my spare time, and my priority this weekend will be Valentine's Day. As someone who recently did get married, I feel like that should probably be my focus, and everything outside of that will be on getting this thing up and going. And also on that, happy Valentine's Day. I hope everyone has a fantastic one and gets to spend as much time with your significant other as you were hoping to. So outside, so outside of the shambles that are my other hobbies outside of Marvel Snap, it was a big day in Marvel Snap. We did get the patch finally. It did get delayed, which gave us the data download, which we'll be covering in today's video. We also had the return of Grand Arena, which is really exciting. Personally, for me, I was really looking forward to this because of all the limited time game modes outside of Team Clash, this is the one that I have the least experience with. The first time that it came around, I just kind of dabbled with it because it was at a point that I was kind of, it was right around the point where I was just kind of done with Marvel Snap for a while. So I think I just played a couple of games and called it quit there. So I'm excited it's back around, that I can actually put some attention to it. I'll probably be grinding it over the next week to get up the rewards track, and I'm excited to hop in and see what it's all about. And then also we had the OTA dropped, and essentially a lackluster OTA, which for me personally, I guess the first thing I want to say about the OTA is that I've always been someone that's really excited and happy to see that they're buffing Series 1, 2, and base cards. For me, I think that returning new players, they need more attention in OTAs to kind of give a little bit of a boost to the cards that they're kind of stuck with just for 6 months until they build up their collection. But I think the unfortunate thing is it's not the meta that we needed right now. It's not the OTA that we needed right now. The meta is, essentially, in my opinion, in a pretty rough spot, and I think a lot of people also were hoping for something a little bit more drastic. And I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure how they're actually going to meaningfully change it without just completely undercutting a bunch of cards. The first one being Star-Lord. He's only been out for like 9 days now. They usually do not nerf season pass cards that soon. I know when we were talking about Shu Lao, I know a lot of people had a bunch of examples. I think Elsa was one that got brought up. Elsa got nerfed pretty quickly, but I am really curious to see how they're going to be able to essentially limit the things that Star-Lord can do without just completely undercutting him and making him unplayable. One really interesting suggestion that I saw was just make his ability not on reveal, so he can't be copied by Absman and Grandmaster. That would still allow him to do the things in the decks that he's supposed to, have a really good turn 6 play if you play him on 5, rather than absolutely insane 5 and 6 that you have for playing him on 4. I thought that was a really kind of an interesting suggestion. I don't know if that's valid or not. I just thought it was really neat. The other one that I keep seeing that everyone is asking for a hit on is Fing Fang Foom. He is an absolutely insane card to have right now. He fits in so many decks. I think that him as a card is not the problem. He's a big body. I think the issue with Fing Fang Foom right now is that we have an extra energy problem. With Star-Lord, Wiccan, sort of, not really. Wiccan is just kind of one of those things where if you didn't fire Wiccan off, you're kind of in trouble. But we just have this problem right now. We're getting extra energies really, really easy. I think with Fing Fang Foom, him being a 7 cost is supposed to be something you have to work towards to get him out on the board. and he's just too easy to play right now. Like he just is. Like you can, throw in any number of things in your deck and you can get him out. I think Fing Fan Foom being a thing is limiting people wanting to play Luna Snow because you don't want to give your opponent that extra energy. I think that's kind of a problem. So I'm curious to see if they're going to approach the next whenever we're going to get a big Jurassic OTA, if Fing Fan Foom's going to get hit or if they're going to address, all the extra energy. I know it's also been brought up that we need a tech card against extra energy. With the data mines and everything, I don't see anything coming. So if they are planning on putting something in like a Mobius and Mobius, I have no idea when that would be released. But either way, pretty disappointed in the OTA. Was hoping for something a lot more drastic to shake things up and kind of make the meta a little bit more fun to queue into. But other than that, we're going to be talking about data mines today. We're just going to be talking about April. I'll save May for another one, and we'll talk about that at a later date. But let's dive in there and let's look at the cards that are coming in April. So before we get into it, I think it's important we get to discuss the new keyword and objective because we do have clarification on how it's actually going to work. The objective will trigger after the end of turn if that card is in play. I think that is an important clarification that we finally got because you can't just have a hand full of objective cards and you're triggering those objectives and things are just happening on the board. The card does have to be in play. I think the important kind of gray area which I still need clarification on, and let me know down in the comments if they have stated whether this is the case or not. Does it work retroactively? So essentially, if you have the card in hand, does the objective start tracking, or does it actually have to be on the board for the objective to start tracking? Because that's actually going to determine, how a lot of these cards could potentially play. Because if you have to get them out early to kind of start seeing that progress towards getting that trigger, it's a lot different than if you can just hold it in your hand, wait for that objective to finish, and then play it out. So I'm really curious to see how that's going to work. I'm kind of leaning. Honestly, I'm on the fence on which way I kind of would want it to go. I think I may be leaning slightly towards I think it needs to be in play for the objective to start tracking. But there are a few cards that would be exceptionally busted if that was not the case, and it could track in your hand. Speaking of which, let's talk about the Season Pass card. We've got Strife. He's a 3/7. Hey guys, editing Dare here. He's in fact a 4/6, not a 3/7. I was using an outdated data mine for Strife specifically. So that will change a little bit what my assumption of him is going to be, but most of it's still fine. Objective, play 3 on reveal cards. Use the highest cost on reveal in your hand. And it looks like we're keeping the pattern of exceptionally strong Season Pass cards for April. I think this guy's going to be good either way. So if it is not tracking it unless they're on the board, so you play him on 3, you play a 4 on turn 4, you play an on reveal. On turn 5, you play an on reveal. Turn 6, let's say you throw a big power on reveal into the lane with him on turn 6. You hold back an Arnim Zola. It triggers that free Arnim Zola effect. It then takes your 6 power card and sends it to the other lane. Or even better example is you play him in his own lane. You're playing a bunch of on reveals in the other lanes. All of a sudden, you play the last one on turn 6. He fooms. I think this guy's going to be nuts. But the other side of it is that does it actually work? Does it start tracking the progress if it's in your hand? Because in that case, you're gonna have to be very careful when you play him. You're also gonna have to be careful when you play him, because if you do throw him out on 3, you play 2 on reveals on turn 2 and 1 on 5. Maybe you haven't drawn that that Arnim Zola or that Foom yet, or maybe you don't have a card with him that you want it to Arnim Zola, so you'll have to play around with that a little bit. The other side of it, like I said, is that if it's tracking in your hand, you just hold him till turn 6. You play him out there, and then you can plan around that accordingly. Of like, okay, I have this in my hand. I'm just going to hold on to Strife. I know I have Arnim Zola and I have Foom in my hand, or one or the other. You just play him on turn 6 with something else, and you get the effect. It's going to be a very, very interesting card to play around with. I think he's going to be really, really strong. I'm actually, he's going to be a good card. Cosmo is going to be an exceptionally popular card the week that he comes out. I'm really honestly curious to see what people kind of come up with Strife. I think that he's going to be one of those ones that he's going to, essentially for me, he's going to be Star-Lord. Star-Lord was fantastic in High Evo by himself. Then as soon as, people started throwing stuff at it, like, here's Asman, here's Grandmaster, he turned into a good card, into an insane card. And I'm really curious to see what people are going to put together for our boy Strife. I think that he's going to be a card to he might be an issue. The next card we're looking at is, I believe, the Super Premium Pass card for the month. It is Techno Organic Virus. It is a 1-cost ability. It is on reveal. Copy this to your hand with +2 cost. Infect your other cards here. Replace their text. I can't decide. So he's an interesting card. So essentially, you have cards on the board. You play him out there. He infects them, replaces their text, which infect, I believe it's +1 power for every card you have on the board that has infect. So if you have a full board, that's a lot of power. I mean, essentially, not even, if you don't even have like 4 in every lane list, you have 3, every card's getting +9. So seems really, really strong. But you also, one, have to play all those cards out on the board, and he gets more expensive as he goes. Because essentially, you play him once, he's 1 cost. You play him a second time, he's 3 cost. And then for the third lane, he's going to be 5 cost. And you have to, fill your board for cards that you want to infect. I think he's going to be really interesting. I know a lot of people that I was seeing react to this, or people even in the comments were saying, this is a Sauron Nightmare card, which potentially, yes, it could be a very interesting Sauron card. The only issue is do you have enough floating mana in a Sauron deck to get him out, 2 times? 3 just seems unrealistic. For me, the first thing that I thought of is a weird zoo deck. You got Squirrel Girl, you got Shauna, you've got oh my god, why can I never, Debris. You're throwing out all these cheap cards everywhere. And there's a bunch of cards that are coming out that throw rocks out there. You throw all these cheap cards to just kind of clog your own board, and then you're using Techno Organic Virus to just essentially buff everything up. That's where my mind is going with it. I'm really curious how he's going to work out with other decks, because he just seems like he's going to be really expensive to kind of get that big payoff, and it's going to be really hard to fill up the board and use him. Because yeah, you're going to want to play out other cards. Let's say you use Squirrel Girl on turn 1, you play out something else on turn 2, you techno, or actually, yeah, you won't even want to play him on turn 2, because you want to get the value, you want an almost full lane. So maybe it's Mr. Sinister on turn 2. Squirrel Girl into Mr. Sinister on 1 lane, you've got the 3 already, you play Techno Organic Virus down. And then, turn 3 you could Shauna, but then that literally clogs your lane you just infected up. So, you play something out on turn 3, and then you got to play him on turn 4 again. And, then you got to put something else on the board on turn 5 to kind of add some more bodies out there. And then turn 6, you got to play him for 5 mana. It's just, I really want to see him in action. I'm just really hesitant on how he's actually going to work. I really think the only way he makes sense is if you're doing some sort of zoo shenanigans. A bunch of 1 cost, a bunch of cards that literally just clog up your board, and you're playing him out there too. I think that is the only thing. I was about to say he would be really interesting with something like Kitty Pryde, but even Kitty Pryde, he erases her text, so it doesn't matter. I was like, it'd be cool, she gets infected, comes back to your hand, you could use her to fill up another lane, fill up one of your 3 lanes to 4 and be infected. So, I'm curious. I don't know. I'm very skeptical about this card. I want to see it. But, the other cool thing is, let's say you do have all of that. Let's say you fill up your board full of rocks and squirrels, and Shauna targets, and, whatever else. And then all of a sudden, everything's ongoing now. So then you just Spectrum. You Spectrum, and then you just buff everything back up. But also, do you have the mana to do it? Do you have the mana to do it? Actually, Moon Girl would be kind of nuts in this, now that I'm thinking about it. You know, you have the 3 infected cards in one lane, and then a late turn play for you as you play Moon Girl down on that lane to, you know, buff everything else up even more. I don't know. I want to see it. I really just feel like there's not enough energy to make all these wacky things happen with Techno Organic Virus. I'm excited for it, but I am very skeptical it's actually going to be able to pull some of this stuff off. But that is our premium season pass card for the month. So our first Series 5 seasonal pack is going to be Wolverine Horseman of War. He's a 4/3 objective. This has 6 or more power. Give one of your cards at each location +3 power. I mean, that's not too bad. I mean, essentially he's a 4/12, assuming you have cards in every other lane. I think he's going to be very cool in a lot of the buff decks. I think the only unfortunate thing is you're going to kind of have to work for it, because there's not a lot of easy +3s anymore outside of, I mean, Agony would be the easiest. Agony gets you there in one card. You could get lucky with America Chavez, and then you could also really just hope and pray with Ironheart. I mean, but other than that, all the other buff cards, I think anymore, you know, +1, +2. So you would have to hit him a couple of times in your hand. The other thing is that I think he is going to be one of those cards that you can buff him in your hand, and then when you play him out, the objective should trigger that turn, because he, you know, if he has more than 6 power. So assuming you have cards in every other lane, as soon as you play him out, he's going to buff everything up. So, and I think the way that it kind of reads is that he should, you know, also count for objectives. You know, Nidavellir would get him there. So even if you hit him with Galacta and then put him on, why am I forgetting what the +1 location is? You guys all know what I'm talking about, but you know, you hit him with Galacta, you put him on that, he gets +1, that puts him at 6. He should trigger at that point as well. I think he is going to be, I think he's going to be a very interesting card in a lot of buff decks. I think the only unfortunate thing is that I think he could have been really cool in Surfer. I don't think so. I think he's definitely going to be fitting into a hand buff deck, not necessarily with Surfer, which could be cool. I mean, you know, bring you back. You know, Shu Lao is probably another one that works perfectly with him. Is he the best target for Shu Lao? No, but you know, you do play him out on, you know, play him out base power on 5, and then you Shu Lao him on 6 with something else, and then you know he gets an insane amount of power. You know, he goes up 12 and he goes to a 4/15 and then throws 3 power out to every lane. I mean, it's not a bad combination. It's not necessarily Scarlet Spider where, you know, you're throwing you're throwing a 20 power Scarlet Spider into another lane, but is it a decent option? I do kind of like him. I like his mechanics. I think he's going to fit well into a lot of the buff decks, and I'm actually kind of excited to kind of get my hands on him and play around with him a little bit. Plus, his art is sick. I mean, that is a cool Wolverine. All right, on to the next one. Next one is our Series 4 card that's dropping in Week 1 in Ascani-san. Apparently, I can say it now. Activate, create a 1-cost card at another location. Increase the cost each time you're winning here as the turn starts. How do I feel about this? I mean, he's essentially he's an RNG machine. I mean, literally, you play him out there, it's going to be one of those things. I mean, it's you want your opponent to play in this lane sort of thing, or maybe you don't. Maybe you were really counting on that 5 cost that you're going to be popping out there on turn 6. Because I think in my mind, you don't hit activate until you want to pop something else out there. It's not, you know, you throw a 1 cost in another lane and each turn it turns into something else. I think he just sits there and he keeps increasing the cost as you're winning that lane. And so your opponent's going to want to be fighting on that, because nobody's going to want a free Iron Man popping out on turn 6 from this guy. I don't know. I see him being... Yeah, it's another RNG card. Sometimes he's going to roll high and sometimes he's really not. You know, to me, I've been experiencing that, especially in high voltage. I was playing a lot of Shauna. Everything's great until until your entire hand has 3 power. So I think he's going to be a fun card. I do think he's going to be a fun card, but I don't know. In his strictly competitive standpoint, I mean, yeah, he's going to be a gambling machine of just roll the dice and hope you get something good out of him. I do think he's a cool design, though. I do really like it. But I don't know about what he's like from a competitive standpoint. I don't really think he's there. Ugh. Okay, let's move on to the next one. On to week 2, we've got April 14th, we have the release of Archangel, the Horseman of Death. He's a 2/3 objective. Your cards are destroyed 4 times. Resurrect 1 here with +4 power. This is one of those cards where I was talking about it kind of matters whether that objective is ticking in your hand or whether he has to be in play to see it for himself on the board. Because if he's, if he's progressing that objective while in your hand, that makes things, relatively easy, especially in a destroy deck. I guess even on the board, it's easy in a destroy deck, but you get X23 out there on turn 1, you play him on turn 2, you carnage the X23, she pops over in his lane. All of a sudden, you're very limited on, hitting your X23 again. I think the other important thing that we kind of need to recognize is that you resurrect a card with +4 power. There's a lot of cards in Destroy that already resurrect themselves. So, your X23s, your Wolverines, your Deadpools, he's not bringing them back. So the cards that you would normally target to get destroyed, he's not going to be able to bring them back is what I'm assuming here. So you'd have to be very, I guess, strategic on what you're going to destroy to hopefully bring back something big. Also, you don't want to bring back a Deathlock to destroy everything else in a lane. But, I mean, a very interesting thing that you potentially could do is let's say you time this perfectly and you've destroyed 3 cards. You have him on the board, and then you play out an Arnim Zola hit of Venom. That Venom gets destroyed. Then you bring back that Venom again. But you'd have to be extremely strategic with how you played that out. Or, maybe it's something along the lines of you eat a death with your Venom and then he can bring that death back. That's also another big swing in power. But I think that he is going to be a fun card in Destroy either way. I think that any time that the basic archetype packages get some sort of card to play around with is always exciting. I think Moira has been one that's brought a lot to Destroy. She still just baffles me with the things that I've seen people pull off with Moira. But I think that Archangel is going to be really cool. I am just really curious once again to see how that objective is tracked. When does it start progressing? And either way, I think that he is going to see some very interesting play. Okay, we got week 3, April 21st. We've got Polaris, Horseman of Pestilence. Objective, cards in play are afflicted, -5 power. Put a card from your hand here. Fantastic card for affliction. However, I'm really worried about it because I think you're going to have to hold her back. In an affliction deck, you don't want to play her out early. If you play her out early and you triggered that -5 power before, you get some of the cards out of your hand, you don't want to pull, especially in affliction, something out early that you don't want to pull out. She pulls out Ajax, huge, fantastic, awesome card. She pulls out your Hazmat before you're ready for Hazmat to be pulled out, not so great. So it's one of those things where I honestly think that you hold her onto her. You have a bunch of stuff afflicted on the board, and you essentially play her as a cheap Dragon Lord. The other card that I was actually like she could have some really interesting play with was Anti-Venom. Because it's both sides. I mean, it doesn't state that it has to be your opponent's cards or your cards. So you could afflict your opponent's whole deck and that counts, or you could afflict your own. And you could get some very cool plays off of Anti-Venom. So maybe you don't even go a complete affliction package. I was playing around with a deck. That's been 6 months ago, but it was essentially a high Evo iteration with just like Abomination, Cyclops, had some Scorpion in there, and it had Anti-Venom. And you play Anti-Venom, it hits a big card that's 5 cost, makes it 0. You play it out there, you play out Polaris, it pulls something out, and then you Luke Cage it all or Shadow King it to kind of get that power back once she's gotten her objective complete. I think she's going to be cool to play around with. I actually do like to see Affliction get some love. I weirdly have been enjoying Affliction a lot. I think it does need some attention because it is lacking, and it is easily countered by Luke Cage. But it is a fun deck to play with, and I think that she's going to be fantastic. I think you just got to be careful because once again, I think it's going to be easy to kind of fall into that trap of put her out there and then all of a sudden you play a Man Thing out there, they play 3 cards into a lane you weren't really expecting. All of a sudden, she's pulling something out of your hand you didn't want. So very, very interested to see how this objective mechanic is going to work, specifically with cards like her. Next card is the Series 4 card for Week 3, and Mother Ascani. She is a 4/4. On reveal, give the leftmost card in your hand +2 power and -1 cost, and then copy it. So it's more expensive mixture of Majestic Wingbeat and Frigga, but it's not played. So, I mean, I think she's going to be great in Victoria hand decks. I think that's to me the first jump to conclusions is she's going to be really, really good in Victoria hand decks. Especially with things like Demon. Let's say that you summon a Demon out there on turn 1, it just slowly moves over to that left position. You play her out there. All of a sudden, it's a 0 cost 8 power. That's not bad. Plus, in a Vicky hand deck, she's going to be buffing it as well. Or Vicky hand herself. Maybe you're holding on to Vicky hand at the end. You throw Ascani out there. It hits her. Then you have 2 Victoria hands to play on turn 5 or 6. Maybe you play the cheap one on turn 5. And then could you Frigga's 3 cost, right? What's the cost on Frigga? Because then you could, yeah, and then I mean, yeah, you Frigga get another copy of Victoria and you play 2 of them. Then on turn 6, which that's everything lines up perfectly sort of situation. But to me, that's where she lands. I mean, she's a 4/4. She's not bringing a whole lot of power. Whatever you hit with that +2 -1 needs to be significant, and I think really the only deck that can utilize that very well would be a Victoria hand deck. Unless bounce could also be interesting. I guess a bounce deck could be interesting, but then again, I don't know if you're fitting a 4/4 into a bounce deck. I don't think she really has the power, or really honestly, I don't think bounce has the space to put something in here like this, because they have a lot of other ways to make things cheaper and bigger and all of that. So to me, she's going into Vicky hand, and I'm interested to see if someone can find something else to kind of throw her into, but not a huge card that I'm like, woo, need that in my life. In the last card, Week 4 for April 28th, we have Storm, Horsemen of Famine. Objective: in 2 turns in a row with unspent energy, give your other cards here and in your hand +2 power. And I know I've been beating a dead horse with this. Specifically, Storm is the one where I'm like, does it count if she's in your hand? So specifically, she's a 3 cost. You draw her, or you have her in your starting hand. You skip turn 1. You play a 1 cost on turn 2. Will her objective fire when you play her out? Because that's going to make a big difference. Because if not, you're playing her on turn 3. You got to play, essentially, it's at that point, it's just high evo. I mean, high evo deck is where she's going to shine specifically, because you play her out on turn 3, you have not unspent any energy. You play her, you play a 3 cost on turn 4. You get your Cyclops out there on turn 5. You Star-Lord or whatever you're hunting in your high evo deck, you have to float another energy, and then all of a sudden you've had your 2 turns. So you're not seeing the upside of her until at the end of turn 5 if you're floating energy every turn, and that's if you played her on curve. If you don't play her on curve, she kind of loses that value, and she's a dead card. No, I mean, she's not a dead card on turn 5, because I think essentially if you played her on turn 5, you still floated some energy, she would still fire at the end of turn 6. But I mean, you can't play her on turn 6. Plus, I mean, I think it's nice that she buffs the lane, but I think her buffing your entire hand with +2 power is something you want to get out early. So I think you definitely want to play her on curve, especially if she's counting that objective while she's in your hand, because that makes things really, really good if that's the case, especially in essentially the high evo or the energy float decks right now. Really great, really strong decks right now that I feel like she's just going to fit right into. Does she replace Cyclops? Potentially, because I mean, Cyclops, you get him out essentially on, even if you get him out on turn 3, or it's the same as turn 4, it's him plus -6 power if they have 2 cards in their other lane. What is he, a 3/4? So I mean, essentially he's a 3/10. So, I mean, if you get her out there, you have one other card in the lane. I mean, she gives +2 power to that. She's a 3/4. She buffs your hand. I think she already, I already think that she outpaces Cyclops, assuming that you play all the cards in your hand. Yeah. Math, because you don't have to play 3 cards of your hand for her to meet the level of Cyclops. And I actually really like this because it gives you another option outside of Cyclops if you don't want to go the affliction route. I know High Evo kind of has, its affliction route and its non-affliction route. The affliction being, Abomination, Cyclops. You could throw a Scorpion in there, and then you can go that route. Or the other one is the energy float. You got Star-Lord now. You've got She-Hulk. I think Storm is a better fit into kind of that side of High Evo and less of the affliction route. And I kind of like that we're kind of have a deviating path of 2 different ways to play High Evo. So, and as someone that has been really enjoying High Evo even before Star Lord came out, I like to see it. I think she's gonna be fantastic in High Evo. Um, I'm curious to see what they do with Star Lord, because how they actually adjust him or make any changes to him. There are a lot of other fantastic energy float decks out there as well, so she won't be restricted to High Evo. But I think that's really going to depend on what they end up doing with Star Lord and whether those decks can actually make it after the fact. But even if he wildly gets obliterated in the ground to never see the light of day again, I think she's going to be a fantastic option in those High Evo decks, especially the She-Hulk, the She-Hulk versions of them. But I am excited. She is probably one of the cards that I'm most excited for outside of Strife. I think Strife is probably the top, but Storm is kind of up there for me because I think she's going to be really cool. I keep forgetting to do this on my other Datamine videos, but let's actually run through some of the noteworthy bundles. The first one is on April 9th. You can get a copy of Namora for 4,000 gold, which at this point comes with 3,800 collector's tokens, which is a fantastic conversion rate, especially if you don't have Namora. Is she a huge meta relevant card? No. But it's also good to kind of grab these cards with the gold, so that kind of takes them out of the pack system, so that when you are chasing the card that you want, you're not pulling Namora. But it's actually a pretty decent bundle for a Series 5 card. And then the other noteworthy one for the month is actually X-23. If you do not have a copy of her, she's actually Series 4. I actually keep forgetting that X-23 is a Series 4 now. But she is a Series 4. For 2,500 gold, you get her and 3,500 tokens, which is not bad. But those are kind of really the best gold bundles for the month. My advice always has been is utilize your gold on these bundles to get cards that you don't have, or ones that have really good conversions with tokens. That's essentially the only kind of way that I spend my gold, is waiting on these bundles. But that is the bundles for the month of April as far as gold goes. And that's the cards for April. Let me know down in the comments on what your thoughts are. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Which one are you looking forward to the most? I think at this point, honestly, I am excited for Storm. I'm really excited for Storm. I think Strife is probably my top, though. I am really worried about how he's going to end up being. But I think those are definitely my top cards for the month. I am excited to kind of play around with Polaris. I think she could be very interesting. But I think that Strife and Storm are definitely leading the pack for me right now. But overall, once again, thanks everyone for watching. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button for more of my content. And I'll see you guys all in the next one.